Hey folks, my name's Ed Trevors. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest serving in the beautiful parish of Christchurch-Shelburne that sits on the ancestral and on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Gwe. Now today I am filming from my mother's sewing loft above the garage in beautiful Oak Point, New Brunswick that sits on the amazing Miramichi River that is also the ancestral and unceded territory of our Mi'kmaq people. I'm feeling quite laid back. I don't know if it's because I took yesterday off completely, but I'm feeling quite laid back. I'm sitting on a couch with lots of pillows, the sun's shining in, it's a beautiful day here, and I'm feeling kind of chill. So today I wanted to talk to you about a conversation that I had in the comments last week. Now I'm not going to go through it verbatim, but the bottom line is the friend of the channel who made the comment, at the end of the day, they wrapped it all up to say, if God had been a better teacher, maybe humanity would have gotten a few things right. Maybe we wouldn't be as messed up as we are. That God really should have just given much clearer, much simpler instructions than what we see written down in the Bible. Brilliant statement. And I mean that. I'm not being facetious at all. It opens up an incredible thought experiment. What if God had been clearer? What if God had given us simpler instructions than what we see in the Bible? As I ventured down that little rabbit hole, after about an hour, another thought popped into my brain. How could God have been clearer? Right? We look at the Bible, we go back into the Bible, and we see God's interactions with humanity. And God generally is quite clear. I mean, with Abraham, I am your God, you are my people. Listen to me. Do what I tell you to do. We'll get along just fine. The instruction is, do what I tell you to do. I will speak to you and you will do what I tell you to do. Great. You look at the story of Moses. Look at the story of the Exodus. All of a sudden, the people are in the desert. They're wandering around. They're not entirely certain about this God that has saved them from captivity in Egypt. So what does God do? Here's 10 rules. 10 rules. What did they do? 600 and some odd subsections of these 10 commandments telling us how to live. If this, do that. If that, do this. If you wear 2 different types of fabric, then you deserve to be stoned. If you kiss the wrong person, love the wrong person. If you eat the wrong foods on the wrong day, right? We took 10 real simple instructions and we blew it up. We blew it up into something that it would take you a lawyer to figure out. And quite honestly, we do actually see how it became the job of the leaders to judge what was and was not right. Now, all throughout the Old Testament, we see the people sort of moving towards God, moving away from God, moving towards God, moving away from God, moving towards God, moving away from God. And this isn't working. God sees this. It isn't working. God is still their God, but they are not God's people more than half the time. They move closer to God in trouble. They pull away from God when things get good. So in the end, what does God do? How does the Old Testament really come to its conclusion? Is the birth of the Messiah. And what's Jesus' primary message? When he is challenged by the teachers of the law, when he is challenged by the Pharisees, when he's challenged by the priests, when he's challenged by the lawyers, what is the greatest commandment? What does he say? Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and body, and love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the laws and all the words of the prophets. Everything that was ever written, every instruction that was ever given, every rule, every law, every edict, every ounce of guidance that was given by God, by priests, by prophets, by kings throughout the history of the world can be summed up into these 2 things. Love God with all that you are and love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's the core of Jesus' message. Everything else that Jesus teaches should be seen through this lens, because everything else that Jesus teaches is a way for us to live this particular life, to live life according to these two commands: loving God with everything that we got and loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. If we can do those two things, we got it made. How does it get simpler than that? See, I would challenge us all to take our responsibility in this teacher-student relationship. That God is the teacher, we are the students. I would say that God has given us an incredibly simple way to live in right relationship with God. By loving God with all that we have, and by loving our neighbors as ourselves. But we do not like the simple. I would say that human beings, for the most part, we do not like the simple. I think we truly need things to be complex. Because when things are complex, then we feel like we've achieved something. When things are too simple, it doesn't feel like we had anything to do with it. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like we really were involved. It doesn't feel like we've accomplished anything. And the truth is, when it comes to Jesus Christ, when it comes to God's rules, it's not about our accomplishments. It's about God doing all the work so that we might be with God. It is not about showing us a path that we must follow, that we must walk, that we must do X, Y, and Z, that we must be good, that we must obey, that we must whatever. God did the work. So stop, take a breath, put down your tools, put down your knowledge, and accept that the way forward has already been taken care of by God. And all that is left up to you and I is to love God and to love our neighbors. The instructions were incredibly simple. We made them complicated. Let's go back to being simple. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray, if it doesn't bring us closer to God and it doesn't bring us closer to our neighbor, let's get rid of it. Let's be done with it. Let's get back to that simple instruction. Lord, I pray that you will help us love you, that you will help us love our neighbors, that you will help us keep that focus. Amen. Nemultus.